It's great to see you. So let's talk about the small cap. So Russell 2000, we're creeping back to all-time highs here, but every time, Francis, it breaks to a new high, it's kind of short-lived. I mean, in 2026, do we see a sustained breakout?
I think the leadership shift you've seen within the small cap market relative to other markets since the low of the tariff debacle last year of April 8th, through the end of the year, small caps have outperformed the Russell 1000, the S&P 500 by, say, 400 basis points. I think that leadership shift continues, and it's going to be driven by the fact that small cap earnings, which have been in an earnings recession for 2 years and change, are actually just at the beginning of taking off.
How would you broadly, Francis, characterize valuations?
I would say valuations are pretty exciting. Valuations on a relative basis to large are as low as they've been, 25 years. Small caps have been out of favor for a long period of time. So I think the opportunity in small caps is quite large. And typically when you see small caps begin to outperform, it can last over a decade. So get on board.
We think small caps, sensitive, levered to interest rates. What if the Fed doesn't cut as much this year as maybe some expect, Francis? What if we're higher for longer? What would that mean for your coverage?
So I think, the Fed has already cut a lot, right? And if you think about the debt within the small cap space, 40% of the debt within the Russell 2000 is variable, right? So that's already kind of hit the small cap space a little bit. So if we have another cut or two, I think that's helpful. The big thing I'm going to be watching, I think, would be the 10-year. If the 10-year gets 450-ish and above, that could probably dampen a little bit of the expectations on small caps. But from my perspective, I almost don't know if that matters as much as the earnings story. The earnings story is going to be quite powerful. And for the first time in many years, this year, you should see small cap earnings outperform large cap earnings.
What about the regulatory backdrop? I mean, listen, the Trump administration, I think they would think of themselves as friends of business, small and large. I mean, how much does that play into the small cap story?
Well, I think there's a couple of stories there from a Trump standpoint. Regulatory is one of them. Less regulation is a good thing for many businesses, especially in the small cap space, and it's going to be amplified even more so in our space. Layer on top of that, some of this reindustrialization that's taking place in the United States, very helpful for small cap companies. People talk about the emerging markets being a really exciting area to invest. I would say look at the middle of the country, right? That's a true emerging market in the United States where a lot of small cap companies that are unrecognized are going to be benefiting from what's going on in terms of a lot of spending around industrial building, et cetera, throughout the middle.
I was going to ask you whether there's certain verticals in the small caps that excite you more than others. I mean, is it industrials? Is it financials?
Yeah, we are. If you were to look at the majority of our strategies, I'd say industrials is our largest overweight. Now, industrials within the small cap space is kind of a catch-all from machinery companies to service businesses, but at the same token, there are a lot of really interesting business there that the market is just not really focused on. At the same token, information technology is an interesting area. We're slightly overweight there. I think financials are also really interesting within the small cap space. One of the areas you've seen doing quite well in the early part of the year has been banks coming back a little bit in the small cap space. So I do think you're going to see a lot happening there going forward.
What about opportunities overseas?
I think the opportunity overseas is very similar to what you're seeing here in the United States, but it has to be on the higher quality side within small caps. And you can buy some great businesses that are number one or number two in terms of what they do outside of the United States that have great valuations in the small cap space.
Before we let you go, let's get a pick here. You like ESAB.
Yeah,
It hasn't done a whole lot over the past 12 months, but you see opportunity there. Why is that one a buy, Francis?
I think it speaks to what we were talking about in terms of the bit of an industrial revolution here in the United States. This is a company that specializes in welding equipment and consumables.